Today we're going to compare the OnePlus 7 Pro versus the iPhone SE. I know they're both about the same price. I would say that you can even find the OnePlus 7 Pro cheaper if it's used. But anyways, we're just going to compare strictly on the cameras, so let's see how they do. So this is the low light test of the front facing cameras, and I'm walking under a really strong street light which has LEDs, so it should be pretty decent looking at the front screen. But anyways, let's move on to the next section. For portrait mode for the front facing camera, I noticed that the iPhone SE does look or have a faded look to it. On the OnePlus 7 Pro, the human face does look more contrasty, it's more sharper, but I don't like how the background blur isn't as strong as iPhone SE. Now for the back camera, the iPhone SE does not work if there's no human face available. So if you want to take something cool in your hands like a drink or some food that you bought, then it's not going to work on the iPhone SE. Now for the OnePlus 7 Pro, there are two options. You can zoom in, but I noticed that it's really finicky. It does take a while for me to register the image. Sometimes it's really fast, sometimes it's so slow. The times that it does work fast is when I point at something really simple, like a sign or a pole. There are times when I use the telephoto lens to zoom in at the same pole or sign. It takes forever to recognize the shape or object. It's to a point where I just don't even want to play around with it. I've already moved it around 3 steps to the left and right, walked in, walked backwards. It just doesn't work. It takes forever. So at that point, I just want to move on. And I find that happening a lot with the OnePlus 7 Pro. The portrait mode, the way how it recognizes objects and shapes, is just not as fast as a lot of other phones out there. And even in low light, there are a lot of times where it tells me on the screen that more light needs to be required. And don't bother even using the telephoto lens if it's too dark, because it just doesn't collect enough light. So for my portrait mode experience, even though the iPhone does not recognize on objects, it's still finicky, it's still frustrating to use on the OnePlus 7 Pro. For the back camera, the OnePlus 7 Pro is the clear winner here. It has a lot more lenses, so you can zoom all the way out from ultra wide all the way to 10x. When zooming in max with both phones, you can tell that the iPhone SE looks more digitized. It's not as clear as the OnePlus 7 Pro. The iPhone images seem to look more flat, so it doesn't stick out as much as the OnePlus 7 Pro, where you do see more contrast. For HDR, I'm gonna go with the iPhone just because everything seems to look more evened out. So if I do want to make my shadows darker in post, I can actually do that. To get the best results on the OnePlus 7 Pro, I would stick with using the main camera lens. Only when I really need to use the ultra wide angle lens or the telephoto lens, that's when I would switch to it. But to get the best results, stick with the main camera lens. For low light, they both don't do a really good job. I noticed that on the OnePlus 7 Pro, there's a lot of strong flaring on light sources, especially if you're using the ultra wide angle lens, which I don't recommend using at night at all. As I recommend it during daytime, stick with the main camera lens to get the best results, because using the ultra wide angle lens and telephoto lens during nighttime really takes a hard hit on the photo quality. But as a whole, the iPhone images does have more noise, especially up in the skies. Whereas on the OnePlus, it does look a little bit cleaner, but the images does seem to have a bit more of a blotchy look. As well as the greens on the OnePlus, it's way more vibrant and saturated. And then there's night mode, which the iPhone SE does not have, but it is powerful enough to do it. And seeing the night mode images on the OnePlus, I do prefer that over the regular image. Since the night mode is not overpowering where it will make the image look too fake, it does give a good tiny brightness to it, as well as sharpness and saturation. So I think the night mode on the OnePlus does a good job cleaning up the whole image. But you gotta tell yourself, is it worth holding the phone for like 5 seconds, really worth it for that picture? Alright, so moving on to video, they both can shoot up to 4K 60, and in 4K 30, the stabilization looks pretty similar. Now for the focusing, on iPhone SE, it pulses a lot. I don't know if it's just my unit, but it does get annoying. Now for HDR, my vote is going straight for the iPhone SE. I can see a lot more in the shadows than the OnePlus 7 Pro. Also on the OnePlus, the shadows seem to look a bit more blue, so it doesn't seem to be too natural. Now the one thing OnePlus have over the iPhone is that I can shoot on the ultra wide angle lens. So it's really handy when you're in tight spaces or if you just want to do a group video. For 4K 60, it's obvious I want to pick the iPhone SE just because it's stabilized. The funny thing here is that when I'm shooting 4K 60 on the OnePlus 7 Pro, on the screen it looks like it's stabilized, but when you're watching it over again, it's clearly not. Now moving on to low light, I would recommend not using the ultra wide angle lens. It's darker, it really has weird or really strong flaring on light sources, and of course there's more micro jitters. Now moving on to the main camera lens, the OnePlus seems to have the better saturation, the greens are more vibrant, and I would say that it's stronger on the white balancing since the white actually looks white. HDR is still a bit better on the iPhone since I can actually see the leaves on the tree, whereas it's mostly black on the OnePlus. Now moving on to 4K 16 low light, it's really dark on the OnePlus. Of course, it's not stabilized. And since it's not stabilized, I would say the image is sharper on the OnePlus. So if you're just standing still, then I would say the video on the OnePlus will look better than the iPhone. So overall, I would say the OnePlus is a good camera if you're sticking with the main camera lens. I would say the portrait mode is really frustrating to use since I've used other Androids with a better portrait mode system. I just think from portrait mode going wide to telephoto is just too much. And if you're really going for video, then the iPhone SE is going to be better overall. So that is my comparison between the iPhone SE 2020 and the OnePlus 7 Pro. So please follow me on Instagram, give a like, subscribe, hit the bell, and thanks for watching.